So killing people wasn't enough. He had to eat them and then also secretly feed them to other people as well. Today, we are talking about the worst serial killer in Maryland, and this got me thinking that I should do a series on the worst serial killer in every single state. So this is going to be part 1 of 50, where I talk about the worst serial killer in each state in the US. So today we're talking about Joseph Roy Matheny, and I actually have a really old video of him on my page, but I wanted to retell you this story partially for the series and also just because it's insane. He was born March 2nd of 1995. He grew up in a lower income household, and he claimed to have a pretty rough childhood, but his mom later said that this was not true and that he was totally fine and being dramatic and just saying that for attention. He says that he was neglected and placed in foster homes and stuff, and that's where a lot of his issues started. And she's like, none of that happened. You lived at home with me and you were fine. So we don't really know for sure what happened with his childhood. We do know, however, that he claimed to be in the military. He even says he went in combat and was in Vietnam and all this stuff. And all of those claims we can't really corroborate. We know he was in the army, but that's pretty much all we know. And even his mom is he was never in Vietnam. So it seems like he was kind of just making things up to give us an idea of his history and create trauma and make it an excuse for why he did the things he did. But again, we don't know for sure. So he ended up leaving the army at some point, and then in the early 1990s, he ended up getting a steady job as a forklift operator in Baltimore. During this time, though, even though his job was stable, his housing situation was not stable, and I don't think he was a very stable person. So a lot of times he ended up being in homeless camps, and he started developing a super serious addiction to multiple different really hard drugs and alcohol. And in about 1994, he is living in South Baltimore with a girlfriend, and at this point in his life, his only focus is getting high. That's pretty much all that he is focused on. But he's living with a girlfriend, and she also is constantly focused on getting high, but they end up having a son together. And at this time, he is 6. But one day he came home from work and his girlfriend and his son had packed up and left him. So we have this dude whose family just left him. He cared about them, even though he had a drug abuse problem. He cared about his family, especially his son. And Joe thinks that she left him for another man and she's probably living on the streets somewhere. So he takes an axe with him and starts going around to homeless camps asking if anyone has seen his girlfriend. And this dude is a big dude. He's terrifying. He's over 6 feet tall, and he's also on drugs and then withdrawing from drugs as he is looking for his family and wielding this axe around town. At one point, he goes to a place where there's a river and a bridge, and underneath this area are 2 homeless men. Their names are Randall Brewer and Randy Piker, and he asks them if they know anything, and they basically tell him no, and in a fit of rage, he ends up killing them both with the axe and then throwing their bodies in the river. Again, if it hasn't been clear at this point, he is an unstable man who is rapidly losing it. And as he's coming out of this rage of just murdering these 2 guys because he can't find his girlfriend and his son, he's looking around and realizing there's a fisherman down the bank and he probably just saw everything. So he marches over to that guy and kills him as well. Shockingly, this normally doesn't happen in the stories I tell you guys, but the police immediately suspect him, arrest him, and he is put in jail for 18 months. When he's facing trial, though, they don't have enough to hold him, so he is eventually released. And now he has had 18 months to plot against his girlfriend and try to track her down. So for 18 months, he has been just pissed and feeling like the victim and withdrawing. And so he has come up with this revenge plan on not only his girlfriend, but anyone who reminds him of his girlfriend. Just weeks after being released, he is going on the hunt for his girlfriend and his son, and he is going around to anyone who might have known her. And he comes up to one woman, her name is Kimberly Lynn Spicer, and he asks her if she knows where she is, and basically she's not any help. And so he ends up in a fit of rage, stabbing her to death. At this time, he is living at a pallet yard where he is working, and then he has a little trailer on site. So that's where he's living as well. So he ends up taking her body and burying her right next to the trailer where he lived. And then a few months later, in December of that year, he attempts to sell a woman named Rita Kemper, who he brings back to his trailer, and she manages to escape in the fight of her life and reports the incident to the police. But she is also homeless and a prostitute. Police do not take her seriously at all, even though this guy has a history and she's able to identify him and she's able to give them very specific information, but they just don't believe her. They write her off because she is a. However, a few days after this, on December 15th of 1996, a coworker of his goes to the police and says, "Hey, I have a coworker. He's really scary, and he just asked me if I would help him move a body I think you need to arrest him. And it turns out that Joe had asked this coworker to help him move Kimberly Lynn Spicer's body that he had originally buried near his home. He was worried that someone would find her as they were working on this job site. So he's like, I need to move her. And so he decided to ask a coworker, which like is a stupid move, but I'm glad he did because ultimately it leads to him being caught and not hurting more people. So the police bring him in after the coworker told them about this. And it's funny that they'll listen to a random coworker, but they won't listen to someone who's saying, I just survived this man because she's a. So they'll listen to a man, but they won't listen to a woman. Perfect. So they bring him in for questioning, and he ends up admitting to the murders that they know about. And he also admits to some that they didn't know about. We learned that before the two homeless men on the bridge in 1994, 39-year-old Kathy Ann Magaziner, she was a worker, was reported missing, and he confessed that he murdered her and buried her body in a shallow grave, again at the pallet factory that he worked at, and then later he exhumed the remains, placed her skull in a box, and disposed of the rest of her body. And even though he's literally people at this time and going on these like rampages, wielding an axe trying to find his girlfriend that has left him, he is still described as someone who seemed really professional and articulate at work. So a lot of people at work didn't suspect him of anything, which is horrifying that like both things can be happening. And at the same time, he really wanted to own his own restaurant. And so he opened up a little like burger shack on the side of the road and people could drive by and get burgers, just like a little food truck on the side of the road, essentially. He said, however, that after he would kill someone, he would take their remains, he would chop them up into pieces, put their flesh in Tupperwares and keep them in the fridge. And then when he went out and did his little burger stand, he would grind up the meat and mix it with roast beef and pork sandwiches. And he said they were very good and the human body tastes very similar to pork. So he would put human flesh in all these sandwiches and sell them to people, and they had no idea that they were potentially eating human. And this has never been 100% confirmed, but the idea that it is even possible is terrifying. So Joe ended up dying in prison after he was caught for all of this, but he loved the fact that people were horrified that he fed people to other people without them knowing. He was definitely the worst serial killer in Maryland. Let me know what state and serial killer you want me to do next.